Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webcast on the 2021 City Clean Energy Scorecard. My name is Dave Ribeiro, and I'm the Director of Local Policy here at ACEEE. I'll be moderating today's webcast. Today, we present the city rankings and findings from the 2021 City Scorecard. The City Scorecard tracks clean energy plans, policies, and progress in 100 large cities across the country. It assesses local action to advance energy efficiency and move toward a cleaner electric grid and fuels, and do so in a manner that advances equitable outcomes. In our webcast today, we will be joined by officials in several leading cities. They will discuss their achievements in advancing clean energy while simultaneously lowering utility bills, improving community resilience, and reducing pollution. We'll start with a couple quick housekeeping announcements. To ask a question during the webinar, please type it in the chat at any time. We will get to it during our Q&A segments toward the end of the webinar. We will prioritize questions from members of the media. So if you're a press, please note your outlet in the chat box. We will also be recording this webinar and making it available to registrants within a few business days. With that said, let's get rolling. So I would like to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers. They are Stefan Samaripas, Local Policy Manager at ACEEE and lead author of the City Scorecard, Debbie Raphael, Director of the San Francisco Department of the Environment, Jessica Price, Sustainability and Resilience Manager in the City of Madison, and Maribeth Di Lorenzo, Sustainability Director of the District of Columbia. We'll start with Stefan. He will review this year's scorecard findings and announce the leading cities. Stefan, please take it away.
All right. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are at. Everyone, it's great to have you here. And as Dave mentioned, I'm going to run through just some high-level findings from our 2021 City Clean Energy Scorecard. So just a couple of things, if you're unfamiliar with this scorecard here, we look at 100 of the largest cities that are spread across the country, and we look at their clean energy policies and programs that they have adopted. We do this in several different respects. We look at principally policies and programs that correspond to 5 different policy areas, and these policy areas correspond to major economic and energy sectors. So you see those listed on the screen here in the middle. Particularly of note, of course, we look at what cities are doing to reduce energy use and greenhouse gas emissions from buildings, from transportation, how they're working with their utilities to do the same, thinking about the energy performance of their own assets at the local government level, and then also thinking about and this is what we mean by community-wide initiatives, those efforts that really span all these different sectors. So getting right to the results here, this is a breakdown of all 100 cities that we look at in our scorecard. I'll note a couple of quick things here that I think are worth pointing out. As you can see from the top 10 rankings, number 1 this year is San Francisco. This is San Francisco's first year at our number 1 spot, so congratulations are in order certainly to the city. A lot of our top 10 cities did not change from last year. We have the same cities that we did in the 2020 scorecard. However, there was some movement. San Francisco, which I've already mentioned, moved up 3 spots. Washington, D.C. also moved up 3 spots in the rankings this year. And I'll point out just very quickly that we highlighted 3 most improved cities from the 2020 scorecard. Our number 1 most improved city this year was Madison, Wisconsin. Second was Charlotte, North Carolina, and third was Honolulu, Hawaii. So just to give you a sense of what those cities, the most improved cities, took on in this past year. So Madison was notable in that it adopted electric vehicle ready requirements, and also made sure that a lot of the new parking developments in the city actually have taken the step of installing some electric vehicle chargers. They also increased their investment in municipal renewable energy projects. In Charlotte, North Carolina, they took the step of creating a new workforce development program to spur new clean energy workforce advancements. And then they also adopted a policy that works on reducing their energy use and emissions from their own municipal municipal operations. And then just quickly, Honolulu also adopted a new climate action plan this year. So one of the things that we noticed in our overall look at tracking new clean energy actions, this is the third year in a row that we've done the City Clean Energy Scorecard. Each year we take stock of how many new policies, programs, projects cities initiate that correspond to the metrics in our scorecard. And this year was very notable because we started tracking a lot of these efforts right after the COVID-19 pandemic hit cities across the country. We started tracking in May of 2020, and then we tracked new city actions right up through July 1st of this year. And as you might expect, when the pandemic first hit, a lot of cities faced slowdowns in their work. Many delayed the planned work that they had. Others had faced staff furloughs, budget cuts. So a lot of work on clean energy initiatives slowed during that period. Some cities were able to continue doing work. Some cities across the country continued planning and thinking about what they were going to do coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some still continued to make investments in renewable energy, other clean energy infrastructure like electric vehicle charging stations. And then what we started to see coming out of 2020 and into the first half of 2021 of this year is we saw that cities started to pick up on other activities and do so pretty quickly. And particularly a lot of the actions that cities took in this year and late last year were focused on the building sector and improving the energy performance of buildings. One thing to note about this, a lot of the activities were the creation of new incentive programs to encourage retrofits of homes, businesses, and the thing that we have pointed out now for a couple of editions of the City Scorecard is that while that's certainly helpful, there's a lot of room to make further advancements in building energy efficiency and renewable energy by creating requirements that property owners make improvements to those properties. So certainly seeing encouraging signs in the building sector. A lot of activity is directed there, but there's still a lot of opportunity to reduce energy use, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. One of the things that we've consistently looked at in the City Clean Energy Scorecard are targets that cities set for themselves in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the things we've noted in the past in terms of cities' overall greenhouse gas emissions targets is that many of those are many cities have set them, but unfortunately, a good portion of those cities are not tracking consistently the data that would be needed to figure out if they're on track to achieve those. Also, unfortunately for a lot of cities aren't on track to achieve their goals. But that is particularly notable when it comes to the transportation goals and the transportation specific goals that cities have set. Unfortunately, only about a quarter of cities in the scorecard have set a transportation specific greenhouse gas emission or VMT, vehicle miles traveled goal. Of that 1/4 of cities, only 8 are tracking data to figure out if they're on track to meet those goals. And only 3 are actually on track currently to meet those goals. So one of the things that this is really indicative of on the larger scale, and this is something we've seen over a few iterations of the scorecard now, is there is a lot of room to improve when it comes to transportation energy use and emissions from that sector. And we go into that, of course, in a lot more detail and other ways to tackle those emissions in the report. And then finally, one thing I'll mention, high-level finding from this year, we took an effort to increase the focus that the scorecard has on race and social equity driven initiatives. And when you look at sort of the most recent activities of cities, unfortunately, a lot of those activities didn't really account for a large share of the new actions that cities took. A little bit less than 20% of the new City Clean Energy actions were focused on equity. Now, some encouraging signs we're seeing is that an increasing number of cities have undertaken equity-driven planning efforts. And so one of the things we're hoping to see in the next several years is that those planning efforts will lead to a lot of new policies and programs and other initiatives that will get going. And we are seeing that that some folks some cities have created incentive programs to benefit low-income and renter households. That's encouraging to see. That was certainly true of this year. There were several of those new programs, but overall, there's a lot of work still to be done when it comes to equity and clean energy. And finally, I just wanted to highlight some things. I wanted to end by noting some new things to the City Scorecard. I already talked about our equity metrics. We also have a new analysis in the report scoring cities on their smart growth strategies that are focused on clean energy. We have a typology analysis that breaks down our cities into different groups based on similar characteristics they share, look at trends for those groups and make recommendations for what they can do, those cities in each group can do. We have a spotlight on the National Renewable Energy Laboratory's new mobility energy productivity metric. And you can learn about that and a lot of the other data in a data dashboard that we have on the Central City Scorecard website. And I added the URL here for folks that want to check it out. So thanks again. I'm looking forward to hearing what all our participants have said, and love to talk with everyone and answer questions later.
Great, thank you, Stefan. Now we'll turn to our city sustainability leadership panel. So first up, we have Debbie Raphael. As director, Debbie leads the city's efforts to address climate change and build resilience. We congratulate San Francisco for placing first in this year's scorecard, the city's first time holding that rank. Debbie will talk about the city's clean energy efforts. Debbie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dave, and thanks, Stefan, for that really great summary of the amazing work you're doing. I'm incredibly honored and excited to be in this spot. I have to say that San Francisco has been vying for the #1 spot since the report card began in 2013. So here we are, and I'm really honored on behalf of our city to be in this spot. I also want to thank ACEEE and all your partners for the friendly competition that you inspire in the cities across the nation. We're all looking at each other, sharing information, happy for one another when we see each other's successes. And I'm assuming that my colleagues from the other cities are happy for San Francisco. I'm so excited. So what I want to share is a couple things that are going on in San Francisco. The first is, what is our secret to success? So why is San Francisco doing so well relatively? We're nowhere near where we need to be, but we are doing great so far in terms of greenhouse gas reduction. And we are doing so at the same time our city is growing economically and growing in a population way. So since 2019 was the last time we have a certified GHG reduction inventory, our greenhouse gas emissions have declined by 41% since 1990, at the same time that our GDP has grown almost 200% and our population by 22%. So how we get that number is because what I call the total buy-in equation. It starts with the leadership of our mayor, and I hope you will hear from Mayor London Breed very shortly. Our elected officials, we have a board of supervisors because we're a city and a county. We have business and educational institutions that are bought in, our community organizations, our residents and our voters. And of course, happy to take all this buy-in and take action on it are my colleagues in government. So this package of buy-in, this package of willingness to take risks and take bold action to prevent harm is what leads to those kind of numbers, that 41% reduction. Now, we had a big milestone last week. We published our climate action plan, our updated climate action plan. And I like to say that this plan, with its 150 actions and 6 different sectors, is the antidote to the blah, blah, blah of global leaders. I think we all heard loud and clear from the people in the streets of Glasgow, Scotland, that they were tired of these goals with no actions behind them. And our climate action plan is science-based. It is based on the best modeling we could gather from all sorts of different areas. It includes metrics and accountability. It's centered, I like to say it's centered on people, not just carbon. This is where our focus on equity comes in. And the last part of our climate action plan that I think is so critically important is that it looks at the power unique within cities, and that is land use. The power of land use to affect our greenhouse gas emission reductions. Our mayor loves to say that housing policy is climate policy, and that comes in loud and clear in our climate action plan. So in closing, I will just say that there's really no mystery in what we need to get done. We know the actions that need to happen. We know on the building sector, on the transportation sector, on the social and environmental justice sector. It's really a question of political will, and that political will gets built from a foundation of government power and expertise and support by our private sector and by our residents. That's what we need. We need us all to lean in. So thank you, ACEEE. Thank you for this honor.
Great. Thank you so much, Debbie. Now we'll turn to Jessica Price. Jessica is the Sustainability and Resilience Manager in Madison, our most improved city this year. Jessica will discuss the city's achievements. Jessica, please take it away.
Hi, thank you. I am so excited to be joining the group today. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you that are joining. Madison is really proud to be among the top U.S. cities leading on climate action. I'm both impressed and inspired by all of the great work that San Francisco and others are doing. It is truly a friendly competition, and we too are hoping to climb in the ranks as we move forward. So here in Madison, we're committed to reaching 100% renewable energy and net zero carbon emissions for our city operations by 2030 and community-wide by 2050. We're really grateful to ACEEE for this recognition and to all the cities around the country that are really stepping up to take action on climate. I'd like to take this opportunity to share with you just a few of our recent accomplishments. Right now, our biggest milestone is nearly 3/4 of our electricity for city operations is coming from renewable sources. That really puts us well on our way to our 2030 goal of 100%. Reaching this goal has really required us to take an innovative and multifaceted approach that so far included installing more than 1.3 megawatts of behind-the-meter solar at our city facilities. We participate in Madison Gas and Electric's Renewable Energy Rider Program, and we purchase renewable energy credits. The majority of these installations at city facilities were actually completed through our Green Power Workforce Training Program, which prepares young people for jobs in the renewable energy sector. Through the Madison program, Play on Madison, the city has also supported the development of another 2 megawatts of solar for homes, businesses, and nonprofit organizations in the community. And that's through grants and group purchasing. And we're also working with local partners, Sustain, Dane, and Elevate, to provide clean energy and energy efficient upgrades to affordable multifamily rental housing. It's really bringing these cost savings and clean energy solutions and making them more accessible and equitable. We've also initiated a complete overhaul of our fleet operations with a dramatic ramp up. We have over 60 electric vehicles and more than 100 hybrid electric vehicles. We use Wisconsin-made biodiesel for all of our trucking, and Madison Fire Department is now running North America's first and only electric fire engine, which is also made in Wisconsin. And we're setting the stage for clean energy transportation community-wide by passing our new ordinance that requires EV charging infrastructure at parking facilities. These achievements are really the result of the sustained commitment of our city's leadership and staff to climate action and sustainability. So big thank you to Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, City Council President Syed Abbas, all of our alders, and the many city staff for your dedication and hard work. And we're honored to be recognized as most improved in 2021, but our work is not yet done. We have some really big plans for 2022 and beyond. So first, I'd like to say we're in the process of updating our sustainability plan. It will include additional sector-specific goals and strategies around clean energy, resilience, and equity. The 2022 sustainability plan will provide an important touchstone that will guide our actions moving forward. We also have several initiatives related to building energy efficiency. That's one of the main areas that we are going to be focusing on. I'll share 2 examples. The city is partnering with Slipstream Group, which is a local nonprofit focused on climate and energy, as well as Madison Gas and Electric on a pilot program for creating grid interactive efficient buildings. This project will use city buildings to demonstrate how we can reduce energy use and greenhouse gas emissions across the building sector, while also transitioning to a cleaner electric grid. And we're working with a wide range of stakeholders in our community to develop a tailored policy for Madison that will improve energy efficiency in existing commercial buildings and reducing overall energy use while providing cost savings and other benefits to both building owners and tenants. Another major area of focus for us is investing in the expansion of our public transit system. The city is working on a complete network redesign to create a new system of bus routes that better serves the needs of all Madison area residents and businesses. The redesign is aimed at improving access and providing transit equity to those that live in low-income neighborhoods and communities of color, with more service on the periphery areas of the city during more times and days of the week. We're also creating a bus rapid transit system. BRT will expand access to low-cost, reliable transportation while using net zero emissions electric buses. Construction is expected to begin in 2023 and it'll be operational by 2024. And finally, we're ramping up our efforts on climate resilience with a focus on prioritizing resilience benefits for communities that are at the forefront of climate change. Through our watershed study program, which was developed after widespread flooding in our city in 2018, we're creating equitable, sustainable solutions to have a more resilient stormwater management system through the use of both green and gray infrastructure. And we're partnering with researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and others to characterize and develop an equity-centered approach for improving our communities resilient to extreme heat events. So to suffice it to say, we're really, really excited for the year ahead, and we're looking forward to seeing all that cities can accomplish together. Thank you again for everyone coming today.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica. So our next speaker is Maribeth DiLorenzo. Maribeth is the Sustainability Director in Washington, D.C. DC moved into the third place this year. Maribeth would describe Washington, D.C.'s recipe for success. Maribeth, over to you.
Thanks so much, and thanks everyone for being here. It's really exciting. So we're thrilled to have moved up as much as we did, but I'm also thinking about this from the perspective of the great number of cities that are on here, thinking about how do we translate what these top cities have done into our own context. So I'm just going to briefly highlight a couple of things that we've been working on. First, I want to say we're really, really proud of ACEEE for this increased emphasis on equity and how important that is. And I want to share that that matches completely the work that we're doing in the district. We have both at the mayoral level and on the council level, we have new offices of racial equity, and we've been working on RIAs, racial equity impact assessments that are citywide. So really moving from understanding how important racial equity is as a long overdue understanding in many cities in the country, to how do we operationalize that and what does it look like? And for us in DC, what it's really looked like is a focus on how do we help, we were first in the country, and that's another friendly rivalry with New York around our building energy performance standard to make sure our built environment is increasingly efficient. As we know, for the district, that accounts for almost 3/4 of our greenhouse gas emissions. So an incredibly important sector for us. And as we moved into our building energy performance standard, we had an absolutely critical emphasis on affordable housing, knowing that affordable housing is one that we didn't want to endanger affordable housing by putting increasing energy efficiency requirements that could have unintended consequences. So some of the things we did specifically during the development of BEPS, we had a task force that focused on affordable housing so that we could really understand the challenges these buildings face and the needs that they have. And out of that, we developed an affordable housing retrofit accelerator. And we're really pleased to be able to leverage some federal stimulus dollars to be able to do some of that work going forward. And perhaps we'll have the opportunity to talk a little bit about that. And then I think in addition to centering equity in everything we do and really operationalizing that and focusing so much in our city, what that has really meant is focusing on affordable housing. And I would encourage all of the cities to think about what does operationalizing equity look like in this context in your city? And it's going to be slightly different in each place. And then I would like to just briefly, in the time we have left, highlight a couple of our transportation accomplishments, which interestingly, DC functions not unlike San Francisco in some ways. We're a county and a city, but we're also functioning as a state. So we're kind of a unique animal in many regards in terms of our jurisdiction and how we function. And so much of our transportation emissions are out of our control, and the things that we can control in a multi-state region are really important. So we've focused on 3 car-free bus priority programs that we've been able to unveil during the pandemic, during the public health emergency, and then working on electrifying our municipal fleet at the same time that we're coming up with a transportation electrification strategy. So I think really working across the sector strategically, and I think Debbie, my colleague and friend in San Francisco, rightly so emphasized buy-in, and I think that's an incredibly important concept to make sure that we're working effectively and moving the levers wherever we're able to do that. And in some places, it means focusing on adaptation. In some places, it means lining up partners who may have disparate interests, but the same aim at the end. And then in other places, it really means taking a hard look at our climate action through the lens of who has the ability to impact an action. So very much community focused, community centered, and thinking about how are we all going to get to the goal we need to, which is carbon neutral, climate resilient cities.
Great. Thank you, Maribeth. Much appreciated. So now we are going to jump into our Q&A portion of the program. So I invite all of the panelists to turn on their videos. And for folks who have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat at any time, and we will get to them. Before we get to the audience Q&A, though, I have some questions that I wanted to pose to the panel. So first, what is the most important piece of advice you would give to other cities that want to increase the impact of their climate and clean energy work? So I invite you all to respond. Whoever would like to go first, feel free to jump in.
We're all so polite, so you may have to call on us because, so I will jump in. So most important piece of advice. I sort of have 3 themes, 3 words that say it for me. So the first, number 1, approach our thinking and planning as government with what I call radical curiosity. We're going to have to challenge our assumptions that we make about people's behavior, about what people need, about what services are possible, what incentives are necessary. We really need to ask, and with an open mind, what are the programs that will move the needle? The second is the word I'm really loving these days called co-creation. And it gets to sort of the follow-on of radical curiosity. We can't answer the question, what will be most effective, what do people need, unless we are working with the affected communities directly. And Mary Beth talked a lot about this. In Washington, D.C., they do an amazing job of bringing in our partners with us to co-create. Not create and ask them for comments later, but co-create. We're working on this right now with a clean energy equity hub in San Francisco. And the third word, especially for cities that don't have the kind of buy-in that maybe DC and San Francisco have, is the word pilot. You can't, what we need to do is proof of concepts. And sometimes you have to, if you want to take a risk, call something a pilot, because then you get permission maybe to make mistakes and learn. So radical curiosity, co-creation, and pilot, those I think are the recipes for success.
Great, thank you, Debbie. Maybe at your suggestion, I will call on others. So going around my screen here, maybe Maribeth, would you like to comment?
I'd love to. I love Debbie's suggestions. And I think that what I'd add to that is draw on all of your peers. Adapt what other cities are doing to your own context. And, the competition here, it's wonderful that you highlight it and draw it out in the scorecard, but really we're all, we all succeed when we all succeed, right? None of us is doing this alone. and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So if you're, know what cities are doing really great work that matches what you need in your city and your sectors, and then draw on them, build relationships, and make sure that you're really able to push that work forward. And then I think, again, I would just, there's a great adage that we use in equity circles about, that I think captures so much: nothing about us without us. So Debbie spoke to co-creation, and really making sure that we're doing the work in communities to make sure that we're creating a vision that reflects what our communities want and need. And we're not leading with, these are all the things we can't do because of the climate crisis, but we're leading with this: what kind of future do we all want together?
Great, thank you, Maribeth. And Jessica, did you have any thoughts?
I love these suggestions, and I think that the word that comes to mind for me that's similar is partnership. For mid-sized cities like Madison, really thinking about how we can both be working at within our communities and at the regional level, and partnering with our local government neighbors can be a really, really powerful strategy for scaling up our work, creating regional change, sharing success stories, sharing failures, and leveraging our resources. Oftentimes we're operating with limited budgets, limited resources, and the ability to collaborate with folks on shared priorities can be a really, really great way to move things forward.
Makes sense. Great. Thank you all for that. So maybe I'll ask another timely question. There's looks to be a fair amount of federal funding coming down the line. So I want to ask the group about that. So how are your cities anticipating using funds from the already passed bipartisan infrastructure bill, the proposed Build Back Better bill, or other federal funds to advance your sustainability and equity goals? So maybe this time we'll do the reverse order. So Jessica, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, we're really looking forward to the many opportunities that federal funding can provide to advance some of the work that I highlighted in our, upcoming, future prospects and priorities. A couple of folks have touched on the importance of housing. We've used ARPA funding to really make sure that we're helping folks stay in their houses and create the kinds of systems and programs that enable clean energy solutions, reduce energy burden, and provide quality, affordable housing to residents. And so this is a place that we can intend to continue to focus. We really want to create programs that are supporting folks to make sure that energy is affordable to them, that they have access to clean energy solutions and energy efficiency. We're also looking to advance our resilience planning and implementation in both our stormwater efforts, our transportation efforts, and thinking about heat resilience. Those are impacts that we're already seeing here in our region and that we expect to grow as the years go by. And so really getting ahead of that and making sure that we can take proactive steps to plan with our community, as folks have emphasized the importance of planning with your community to provide the kinds of resources and changes to the built environment and have a really comprehensive program that works and is tailored for different communities.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Maribeth, would you like to go next?
Sure, of course. Thank you. So I'm going to highlight again our affordable housing retrofit accelerator, because it's something that I hope, please contact us, call us, email us, because it's something that I hope takes off and other cities are able to do. We modeled on the work of other cities ourselves. We know that it's been we're just launched, but we know that we're going to be able to leverage federal stimulus dollars in ways that can be really impactful in one of the communities that needs it the most. So really thinking about that hard work about what does a just transition mean? And it means that we can't achieve an energy secure future in a way that jeopardizes affordable housing. And it's all the way down to the specifics of what does that look like in a rent controlled building, and how do we make sure that we're not creating some kind of unintended incentive for affordable housing to transition out of its affordable status, through, how do we provide resources, which is one of the things we're doing for energy audits and one-on-one guidance for how to comply with our building energy performance standard. So I think that that combination of building energy performance standard with the ability to do the targeted work in the affordable housing sector can be really powerful, and we're really looking forward to sharing what we find as we go forward.
Great, thank you, Maribeth. And Debbie, how about in San Francisco?
Oh my, we have so many ideas for spending the money. There's no shortage of ideas. I think one of the, we have shovel-ready projects, we have ideas, and we know, just as we've heard from both Jessica and Maribeth, that what we need to do is make sure that the benefits of all this climate work don't actually disincentivize affordability and don't harm the people that, frankly, we need to help the most. And so what we really need is to find ways for incentivizing shifts to existing buildings. San Francisco has already banned natural gas in new construction. We have the most stringent green building requirements for new construction. The challenge we have is retrofitting existing buildings on our affordable housing side, but also in our single family homes as well as our small businesses. And so if we're going to fuel switch, if we're going to get off of diesel, gasoline, and natural gas, and electrify using clean energy, we're going to need to find incentive dollars in that money. Now, as a city, when I think about this money, I think about another word. For me, this is the way my brain works, is I think about this concept I call vertical integration. So money's coming from the feds. The bill has its own structure and its own priorities in big buckets. It's going to come through the state in the form of grants and block grants and other ways before it gets to the cities. And so the challenge for us, and maybe ACEEE can help us with this, how do we help cities communicate up to the states to the feds, so that we, in the implementation side, whether it's affordable housing or transportation, get the money we need in the right ways that we need it, so that we serve our local communities. And I just want to point out that when Stefan showed us that one graphic about the delta between the goals of transportation and the actuals, it's actually a very powerful image. First of all, only 8 cities, there's a reason those 8 cities are viewed. Those are the only ones that are tracking, fair enough, although we do have tracking here in San Francisco, maybe not in the same way that you were looking. But the point being is we shouldn't beat up on Seattle. We should say, all right, Seattle, you have a big delta. What's going on there? And how can we help you with these infrastructure money service that delta? You have the will, but you're having a problem with it. So I'm hoping that ACEEE can lean in on these discussions, help us with the conversations of vertical integration, so that they're based on data and real need.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And Matt, ACEEE is hoping to do some of that work. Won't talk about it today, but something for the future. But Stefan, I was wondering if maybe you would want to pick up on one of Debbie's points, though, in terms of her comments on transportation and progress towards goals. You obviously touched on it when you were giving your remarks, but any other suggestions you have for cities, or any other thoughts as they're thinking about transportation policy?
Yeah, so, in addition to just, talking about goals, ultimately, where the rubber meets the road is policies and programs and getting things in action, right? Goals helpful in guiding and tracking and seeing where you're at, but at the end of the day, we're looking at policies and programs, and San Francisco is #1 overall in the scorecard. It's also #1 in our transportation metrics, and I think that those two things are connected. One of the things that we see from a lot of leading cities across the country is, a bigger focus on electric vehicles, but not losing sight of also, improving transit, getting folks out of their car and walking and biking. All the cities we have focused or included on this panel today are, very bike friendly and walkable places. So, it's important to recognize that, cars are going to be with us, and we need to find ways to reduce the emissions from those cars. But also don't lose sight of the fact that we have levers at the local level to encourage people to take other forms of transportation to get where they need to go, and reduce the overall carbon footprint.
Great. Thank you, Stefan. So I had just one more question for the group, but just as a reminder to attendees, if you have a question about any of the activities going on in San Francisco, DC, Madison, or the findings of the report, feel free to put in the chat and I'll get to it in within 5 minutes. So my last question here. So could each of you share the challenges or some of the challenges you have run into in pursuing your clean energy strategies and how you've overcome them? So why don't we have Maribeth go this time first?
Sure. I think a challenge is, I talked earlier about the importance of reframing as a positive, thinking about the future that we want to build together. And I think maintaining that when we're constantly hearing, like just yesterday, that this critical Antarctic ice shelf is collapsing, in the face of this real crisis that's an existential crisis for all of us, keeping our focus on innovation and partnership and moving together to take action where we can that's something that's really challenging. And it's the nature of the human mind. We focus on what's in front of us, as opposed to, I have, I'm on a burning orb that, is only going to be here for 50 more years unless we do something different. That can be lower down the line than some other immediate priorities. And that's just the way we're wired. So I think having a healthy creative tension on that and making sure that we do things again, connect and support one another as peers so that we don't lose hope and that we are able to not fall into this culture of chastising people for driving cars or eating certain things, but really working intentionally to create a positive message about the future that's possible. I think that's the biggest challenge probably that I experience, and that everyone I talk to working in the climate field finds to be of such import.
Makes sense. Okay. Thank you, Maribeth. How about we go to Jessica next?
Yeah, that paralysis that people can feel, and hopelessness or helplessness that people can feel, that is challenge because the challenge is big, right? The challenge was created over a long term, but with a lot of contributors. And for us, I think one of the ways that, creating a vision that provides people with multiple ways to engage, to say we all need to be doing our part and your part might look different than others, but we find a path that works for us. I think that's a really, really powerful message. And one of the challenges that we face too, and that's a great framing. Framing is very important. And another thing that we run into, and I think you all characterize this for some cities in the report, is a misalignment of policies at the local and state level. So sometimes you don't get that alignment, and when that alignment is there, and sometimes we have that, it's great. Funding can flow smoothly, priorities are aligned, you can get a lot of collaboration and support. But in instances where that's not aligned, you do have to, again, you have to have those partnerships and collaborations with your peers in local government, so you can kind of figure out and come up with creative solutions to figure out what works. But having that alignment with state policies, and we're seeing more alignment now with federal policies and local priorities and state priorities, is really, really critical, and something that we in local government sometimes play an advocate role to say, hey, look where we could be going together if we had more alignment between these policies. But ultimately, some decisions are outside of our hands, and that's when we have to sort of put on our thinking caps and get really creative about things. And that's why, forums like this and partnerships among other cities really helps us understand kind of where those paths are and how we can develop solutions even when we have maybe some roadblocks.
Great, thank you, Jessica. And you bringing up that alignment issue, prompted a question for me. Before we go to you, Debbie, I'm sorry. Just a quick question to Stefan. Could you tell folks a little bit more about the analysis in the City Scorecard as it relates to cities and states, you know, in terms of any takeaways from that work that would be helpful to share.
Yeah, so just real quick, I can mention, you know, we did take a look at the degree to which states are either advancing or, you know, maybe hindering city activities to some degree when it comes to clean energy initiatives. And you really see across the country, it's a mix of different things. I mean, in some cases, in some states, it's very difficult to, you know, adopt new policies that would require, let's say, retrofits to existing buildings, or more stringent building energy codes for new construction projects that are ongoing. Those are pretty common. But we also see that, you know, there are states across the country that are taking steps to put in place policies and programs and you know, take what cities are doing and apply them to an entire state. You know, for example, Colorado adopted a building energy performance standard that applies to the entire state, which is something that Mary Beth mentioned that, you know, they've undertaken in Washington, D.C. Some other cities have undertaken that. And so there are ways that states can help or hinder cities, and you know, checking out the report, you can see kind of a breakdown of some of what those options are.
Great, thank you, Stefan. So then, Debbie, going to you, would you like to go back to the original question in terms of challenges and how you overcame them?
Yeah, I want to really lean into this idea of eco-anxiety and alignment as being significant challenges and important things for all of us to think about. And of course, they have different solutions, very different, but I think about that alignment problem all the time, not so much here in California, but for my colleagues in some other states, where they're worried about what I call the dirty word in government, which is preemption. And so one of the challenges I really see where there's misalignment is preemption, where the cities are trying to take action and the states say, oh my God, we got to stop that. And then they forbid cities from taking action. So that is the opposite of alignment. And I see it as a real danger, frankly, for this country, not so much in California, but in many other parts of this country. The other challenge that I am feeling a lot is one that we always have in government, but I'm feeling it a lot now, which is funding. And this is, I call it the big arm wrestle. So whenever, you know, we're in budget, I'm arm wrestling with the general fund because we have homelessness, we have drug abuse, we have housing problems, we have all sorts of challenges that our mayor is feeling very, a lot of pressure, and rightly so, to take action on. And so I come up and say, hey, climate change, resilience, you know, and they're like, yeah, but I've got these immediate problems. And so one of the questions in the chat was, is there a policy that you would love to see in your own? And I have to say, this is that blessing and a curse. So this is a classic example of be careful what you wish for. So I want to look at the city of Portland. The city of Portland enacted this amazing climate tax. And it's bringing in, I don't know, I'm going to make up a number, so this is probably not precise, $40 million a year. You know, it's a phenomenal thing they're doing with the community to bring in money. The state of Oregon is now preempting any other city in the state from doing a similar tax. So here's an example where you have a city trying to solve the giant challenge of resources and the state saying, no, we don't like that as a solution. So I'm trying to figure out here in San Francisco, what can we do in our political and legal construct as a city in the state of California to raise the kind of resources that I'm going to need in conjunction with federal resources to offer the incentives and the structures to tackle existing buildings, for example, and get off of natural gas. So yeah, a lot of work to be done.
Sure is, yeah. Thank you, Debbie. Okay, so now I do want to move to the Q&A portion from the audience. And Debbie, you did a great segue because you picked the first question that I was going to ask. So your answer is all set here, but to Maribeth and Jessica, if either of you would like to weigh in, the question we received was, what's a policy or program you've seen in another city that you'd like to implement in your own? So any thoughts on that? And I'll let whoever goes first.
If I had my magic wand and could just adopt a program, I would say there are a couple. One is I would want point of sale energy disclosure, which a number of cities have, and I think that would be great, like to really, just like when you buy a car, there's a sticker on it that says this is how it's going to perform. I would want that for all of our buildings, and I hope that we're moving in that direction. I think that's an amazing tool. And then I think, outside of the US context, the city of Oslo in Norway has this amazing program that is called their climate budget, where they're analyzing their emissions reductions alongside their budgeting decisions, and they're really integrated. And I think if more cities could adopt that approach, it would be really impactful. So those are two. I was a little bit greedy. I didn't just take one.
That's okay, no problem. Jessica, how about yourself?
Those are great suggestions. I would also be greedy and take all of those programs. I think here for us, one of the major things that we'd really love to be able to push forward on more, both in our own facilities and community-wide, is the ability for more folks to be able to access, solar energy and other clean energy solutions. There are some regulatory hurdles and some additional structural hurdles that make that technology less accessible than it is in a lot of our neighboring, our fellow local cities and our neighboring states. And so if I could wave the magic wand and create the kind of market and regulatory environment where, everyone, businesses, homeowners, renters, could have greater access to solar energy, I think that would be a really big shift here, and it would get us really make big strides toward achieving a cleaner grid and more affordable energy. So that's a major one. And I think, it would be fast forwarding where we are today to have a completed, thought out and implemented climate resilience plan. It's something that we're on our way toward. And I see great examples from places like Asheville, North Carolina, that have a wonderful community-driven, community-developed climate action plan that really helps guide their work going now and into the future. And that's where we're headed here. But I would love for that work to be just bloop, 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 fast forward that, so we can get to our implementation phases and start creating those changes with our community.
Great, thank you, Jessica. So we have a few minutes left here, so hoping to get to a couple more questions. So the first one, for anyone on the panel, what, if any, city-to-city peer exchange networks, cohorts, or platforms do you participate in that you found to be the most helpful in moving these clean energy efforts forward or breaking down barriers? So any thoughts from anyone on the panel?
Well, Mary Beth put her answer in the chat. Why don't you just say it, Mary Beth, because I couldn't agree more.
Oh, sure. I said starting with Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and then also ICLEI, C40 Cities, and Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, I think, are ones that we've found to be really, really impactful.
Great. And same for you, Debbie, I take it? Okay, great. Jessica, do you have any thoughts on that end?
I would add climate mayors to that list. But you were pretty comprehensive otherwise, Maribeth.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah, the only, sorry, Dave. The only thing I would say is, and this is something that there's been a lot of conversations on, is the power of regional networks and national networks. So climate mayors, USDN, C40 cities, these are North America focused. And when we talk about alignment and we talk about that vertical integration, you often see more similarities in regions of the US than you do across. And so there's also regional networks that I know we're all involved in as well. And I don't need to name them all, but I just want to put that out there if anyone's listening, to think about what's going on in your region as well.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. So I'm going to try to fit one more in here. So could folks on the panel talk about alignment or misalignment with local utilities and major businesses? Would anyone like to go first on that one?
I can speak to that. Here in Madison, the city of Madison has two utilities. We have a good relationship with both of them. Madison Gas and Electric in particular, we do a lot of partnering and piloting, as Debbie emphasized the importance of those pilot projects. Partnering and piloting with them to collaborate on our shared goals. Again, we're getting and we're seeing more and more alignment with businesses too around corporate responsibility. And so we're seeing a lot of utilities and start to create their own climate and decarbonization goals, and our local utilities are doing the same. And so that really creates this tremendous opportunity to think about how you can have a matchup with their programs and rate structures and pilots, as well as the policies and programs that are going on at the city, so that we can really make sure that everything is creating a scaffold for greater impact. And so that's something for us that's been really, really helpful, especially in thinking about, so, one of the things a lot of folks are talking about, building energy efficiency, and having a local utility that's willing to collaborate with you on data and information and potentially incentives or other financial benefits from their side to make those policies and programs work for folks in the community is a really great partnership that I hope others can explore too.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Any other thoughts?
I would say that the utility relationship is can be complicated, and I think it's in San Francisco, Pacific Gas and Electric, just like in Madison, it's gas and electric. And so I find that when a utility is not 100% gas and they see that their business model can shift towards the electric, that they're a lot more willing to come to the table and be real partners with us. And so PG&E, which is our local utility, has been really wonderful at leading on cleaning up their energy supply and working with us on energy efficiency as well. We've been partners for a long time. For me, the challenge on that is going to be about labor. And so the sort of black cloud I see in the future is that the environmental movement and organized labor, we need to get together and get on the same page, because this workforce shift, this just transition with utilities is going to have to be hand in hand with states, federal government, and cities. Otherwise, I just see a big implosion. So that worries me actually quite a bit as I look forward. And then on the business side, we have this wonderful organization called the Business Council on Climate Change, which is the largest employers in San Francisco that are with us every step of the way, whether through employee engagement or their own procurement of clean energy. So there's a lot of great examples out there. Of course, City of Boston has the sort of gold standard on that for businesses to lead by example.
Great. Thanks so much.
Go ahead, sorry, Dave. I was just going to add quickly. So it's nice that we're kind of a continuum, because DC has a different utility structure where we have one gas utility and one separate electric utility. So obviously decarbonization favors some utility models and not others. So that's part of the complication that Debbie was talking about. And I think in each context, some are municipal utilities. Like, we've got such a range of cities with different utility structures. And I think it's really important to have a thorough grounding in your utility structure and think about what your leverage points are.
Great, thank you very much. Well, we have reached the top of the hour, so I think we're going to leave it there. But I just wanted to thank each of you for joining and taking time out of the day, and congratulations on your performance in the City Scorecard.